The Dragonback series by Timothy Zahn. Book 1, Dragon and Thief. Chapter 12. Jack didn't even bother to ask how in the world the dragon could tell they were the same footsteps. "We'd better hide," he said, picking up his speed as he looked around. No alleyways, no open doors, no bushes or shrubs he could duck behind. He peered ahead, looking for a cross street, but the nearest one was a long way away.
"Those platforms,"
Draco said.
"Would one of those do?"
The balconies." Jack looked up at the nearest one. It stretched across the full length of the second floor, a good 6 feet above his head. "Sure, they'd do great. Problem is, they're a little high up, and there's no way to climb them." There was a sudden weight and pulling at the back of his collar, and out of the corner of his eye he caught a glimpse of Dracos leaping out from the back of his neck.
"It can be done,"
the dragon declared as he landed on the ground. "Are you nuts?" Jack hissed, spinning around. "You want someone to see you?"
"That way,"
Dracos ordered, jabbing his snout ahead.
"Run to that building. When I say jump, you will jump up toward it."
Jack turned, frowning. The indicated building had a balcony, all right, one with enough of a gap between the potted plants for him to lie down in, but it was no lower than any of the other balconies. "I can't jump that high, Dracos," he insisted, turning back. "If you think—" He broke off. Dracos had moved 20 feet back and was crouching down in the middle of the street like a sprinter getting ready to run. And in the dim streetlight, he could see that the dragon's gold scales were turning black.
"Go!"
the dragon ordered again.
"Run!"
"Warrior ethic," Uncle Verge's phrase flitted through Jack's mind. What did a Kada warrior do, he wondered suddenly, if an underling disobeyed a direct order? That might be something to ask about when this was all over. "Yeah," he managed. "Right." Turning, he took off toward the building as fast as he could run. He wasn't alone. Dracos's feet were silent in the quiet street, but Jack could hear the dragon's breath rapidly catching up behind him. He could also hear the faint sound of footsteps now, approaching from the direction they'd just come. They sounded like they were running too. Jack clenched his teeth. Directly ahead of him, he suddenly realized, was the building's main door, half hidden in the balcony's shadow. Was that what the crazy dragon had in mind? That Jack would slam into the door hard enough to break it down? He opened his mouth to object.
"Jump!"
Dracos ordered, his voice sounding nearly as close as if he'd been riding Jack's shoulder. Automatically, Jack obeyed, bending his knees and jumping as hard as he could. Something slammed into his back. 2 other somethings jammed hard up under his arms. And to his shock, he found himself arching upwards straight at the balcony. He didn't have time for anything but a startled yelp before the balcony rail caught him just below the tops of his boots, flipping him over toward a head-first landing. Draco, still gripping him under his arms, got there first. He rolled around beneath Jack as they fell, taking the full brunt of Jack's weight on himself as they sprawled onto the balcony.
"Quiet! They approach,"
Dracos whispered into his ear.
"Down and behind me."
Jack rolled off onto the dragon's far side, too winded by their landing to say anything. The footsteps were much closer now and definitely running. Pulling his knees to his chest, rubbing his shins under the tops of his boots where the railing had hit them, he clamped his teeth together hard and lay still. Behind him, he felt Dracos curl around his back, protecting him from view from the street. The footsteps came to a point just beneath the balcony and faltered to a halt.
"What the frunge?"
a human voice said quietly.
"Where'd the little blinker go?"
"I don't like this," a second human voice growled. "He wasn't that far ahead of us."
"Maybe he picked a lock and went inside somewhere,"
the first voice suggested.
"He's supposed to be good at that."
There was a deep snort.
"What? Into a Wistwaki house?"
an equally deep voice demanded. Too deep for human vocal cords, Jack decided.
"In this neighborhood? Today? He's not that stupid." "Hey, the kid just got here," first voice said. "He wouldn't know."
From the distance came a faint roar. Carefully, Jack turned his head just enough to see the sky behind him. There, at the corner of his vision, he spotted the familiar sight of a starship shooting up toward the clouds. a familiar sight, and an all too familiar engine pitch.
Ah, Frunge, First Voice said disgustedly. There goes the uncle. Looks like your buddy's muffed it.
There was a dark-sounding rumbling noise. Jack frowned. He'd heard that sound before. Abruptly, it clicked. A bass drum being attacked by a bunch of chipmunks. Apparently, he and Dracos had run into another Brumga.
They have not muffed it, Drabs,
the Brumga grunted out.
If the uncle escaped, it is because your people failed their job.
Yeah, First Voice Drabs retorted.
Well, if your group... Both of you shut up,
Second Voice cut them off.
Forget the uncle. As long as we have the kid, he'll come when he's called. Except that we haven't got the kid,
Drabs pointed out.
We'll get him,
Second Voice promised, and there was something in his tone that made Jack shiver.
Don't you worry about that. Perhaps the great Lieutenant Raven knows what we do not,
the Brumga rumbled sarcastically.
Tell us what you know, Lieutenant Raven. Watch your mouth, Brummy, Drabs warned. You people work for us, not the other way around.
For starters, I know he didn't sprout wings and fly away, Second Voice, Raven, said.
What about those balconies? Drabs? I already checked them out, Drabs said. Nothing that could possibly be human on any of them. Anyway, he'd have needed a jetpack to get up there. Then he's still ahead of us, Raven concluded. Move out and make sure he doesn't go to ground.
The footsteps resumed, continuing down the street. Carefully, Jack turned onto his back, easing his head up just enough to see over Dracos' side. The two men and their lumbering Brumgan companion were hurrying away down the street, looking right and left to check out possible hiding places. One of the men, he saw, had an infrared scanner strapped over one eye. All three of them were wearing holstered guns at their sides. Jack eased back down again, listening to the footsteps fade away into the city noises. Good thing they've never seen a Kada before, he whispered. I wonder what you look like on an infrared scanner.
I do not know, Dracos whispered back. Are you injured?
Not enough to worry about, Jack assured him. In point of fact, his shins were throbbing and would probably ache for at least a couple more days. Compared to possibly getting shot, it didn't seem worth mentioning.
I did not intend to miss the jump,
Dracos said.
I apologize.
It's okay, Jack said. The boots absorbed most of the impact. I'm still surprised you were able to jump this high with 100-odd pounds of Jack Morgan weighing you down.
I am relieved that it was successful,
Dracos said.
Still, I regret my error.
I said forget it, Jack said impatiently. The sort of people he and Uncle Virgil usually hung around would never apologize even once, let alone twice. The dragon's groveling was making him feel uncomfortable. Hey, no hospital, no foul.
Pardon?
Skip it. Jack took a deep breath. So they were waiting for me, and for Uncle Virgil.
So it would seem,
Dracos agreed.
How is it they do not know he is dead?
We didn't exactly announce it in the news nets, Jack said. Matter of fact, we kept it as quiet as possible. I already told you why.
Yes, the ownership of your spacecraft,
Dracos said.
That point does not appear to apply any longer.
And that might be a problem, Jack admitted, gazing up at the clouds drifting across the stars. There was nothing to see. Uncle Verge and the SNA were long gone. They must have been trying to break into the ship, he said. That's the only reason Uncle Verge would have cut and run.
Will he simply abandon you?
Jack shrugged. We have a standard plan for situations like this, he said. He'll try first to sneak back into one of the smaller spaceports on Vagrun and wait for me. If I don't show, or if he can't get back in without attracting attention, he'll go to a rendezvous spot on another planet and wait for me there.
That assumes we will be able to get off this world.
Normally, that wouldn't be a problem, Jack said. There are regular passenger shuttles, and there's always a way to make enough money for a ticket. He grimaced. Of course, with Lieutenant Raven on our trail, it might not be that easy. I wonder what he's a lieutenant of. For a minute, they lay together in silence.
They expected your return,
Draco said at last.
That would mean they are involved with the falsified theft. Perhaps we should try to learn more about them.
What, you mean go looking for them? Jack snorted. At 3-to-1 odds? You must be joking.
The correct ratio is 3-to-2, Draco's corrected him. You have forgotten about me.
Hardly, Jack said, carefully sitting up. There was no sign of Raven and all his buddies anywhere he could see. You were the one on our side I was counting.
Ah,
Draco said, uncurling himself.
I see.
Right, Jack said. Come on, let's get out of here. A slurred and raspy voice came from the corner of the balcony. Jack froze halfway to his feet. There, sitting against the rail in the shadow between two huge potted plants, was the thin figure of a Wistwak. Sorry, Jack apologized. We didn't mean to intrude.
Not at all,
the Wistwak said, getting to his feet like a collapsible ruler unfolding. He wobbled for a moment as if trying to get back on balance, then abruptly straightened to stand perfectly upright.
Come,
he said, darting suddenly to the edge of the balcony to stand between Jack and the rail.
Come inside. Join the festivities.
Thanks, Jack said, trying to ease his way past their would-be host. The Wistwak clearly was drunk, and in his state probably thought Jack was another of his species. Whoever was inside, though, probably wouldn't make that mistake. The Brumga's earlier comment about only a fool trying to sneak into a house in this neighborhood flitted through his mind. Had there been some sort of trouble between humans and Wistwaki on Vargan today? The Wistwak was too fast for them. Moving like a large four-limbed insect, he again got between Jack and any chance of escape. Dimly, Jack wondered how fast the alien would be able to move if he wasn't drunk.
Come inside,
he repeated.
Bring me off!
Jack winced as behind him the balcony doors were flung open.
Bring me off!
The drunk Wistwak greeted the newcomer.
Another guest! Welcome him! Another guest?
The newcomer said. His voice, as near as Jack could tell, was stone-cold sober.
What is the meaning of this?
Slowly, Jack turned around. Another Wistwak, even taller and thinner than the drunk, was standing in the doorway. His arms were folded, and he was staring at Jack with an unreadable expression. In the room behind him were at least 20 more of the aliens, seated in concentric circles around a pair sitting by a fireplace in the center. All were dressed in glittering finery, with ornate headpieces that caught the candlelight and scattered it around the room. All had apparently stopped what they were doing and were looking toward the balcony. And with a sinking feeling in his stomach, Jack realized what they had done. He and Dracos had just crashed a Wistwaki bonding ceremony.